Good evening. I'm Saoirse Hughes-Scandies with the League of Women Voters. On behalf of the Juneau League of Women Voters, we welcome you to this evening's candidate forum with candidates for both the Assembly and the School Board. This forum is a cooperative effort between the League, KTOO, KINY, and the Juneau Empire. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. We promote political responsibility through informed and active participation of citizens. The League never supports or opposes any political party or candidate. Our goal is to provide information so that you, the voter, may make informed decisions as you exercise your right to vote. The League thanks KTOO for its continued and generous support of this event, KINY for broadcasting this event to even more listeners, and the Juneau Empire for publishing League questions posed to the candidates. Voting is our superpower. We urge our listeners to be sure to vote either by mail, drop box, or in person. Be on the lookout for your ballot that was mailed on September 13th to all registered voters. Early voting opens on September 19th, and in-person voting occurs on Tuesday, October 4th. Thank you for tuning in. Now I'd like to turn this evening over to our hosts, Jennifer Pemberton and Clarice Larson. Good afternoon.
Hello and welcome to Juneau's 2022 Virtual Candidate Forum. I'm Jennifer Pemberton. I'm the Managing Editor at KTOO.
And I'm Clarice Larson, a reporter for the Juneau Empire.
This forum is airing live on KTOO 104.3 and KAUK 91.7 and KINY AM 800 and 94.9 FM. You can watch this on KTOO's Facebook page, ktoo.org, juneauempire.org, and juneaulwv.org. We're everywhere tonight.
So we're going to get started. In 2020, Juneau moved to a by-mail format because of the pandemic. This will be the city's third by-mail election. Ballots were mailed out to registered voters yesterday, September 13th, and should be arriving in mailboxes soon. After voting, there are 3 ways to get your ballots back to election officials. You can drop them off in the mail with postage, but the city encourages getting the post office hand cancel the postage with a legible date on the postmark. Hundreds of ballots in last year's elections were rejected because of the postmarking issues. Ballots can also be placed in secure drop boxes that will be available 24 hours a day, beginning tomorrow, September 15th. There will be 1 drop box available at the Douglas Library/Fire Hall Community Building and 1 at Satter Harbor. Finally, starting next Monday, September 19th, ballots can be delivered in person to vote centers at City Hall and the Mendenhall Valley Public Library during business hours.
We're going to start tonight with the Juneau Assembly candidates, followed by school board candidates. There are 3 seats on the Assembly that will appear on the ballot. In each race, the incumbent is running unopposed. Carol Treem is running for the area-wide seat, Greg Smith running for District 1, and Wade Bryson is running for District 2.
Candidates will have 1 minute to make their opening statements. Then we'll start asking questions. Each candidate will have 55 seconds to respond to each question. Then we'll move down the line so everyone has a chance to answer first. We'll wrap up with 1 minute closing statements.
Be mindful of the timer on your screens, candidates. There will be a pleasant ding when your time is up, and we're going to try to keep things moving along. So wrap up when you see it getting close to 0. Okay, we're going to get started. Carol Treem, you're up first. 1 minute opening statement.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Carol Treem. I've been on the Assembly for 4 years now, so this you might have heard me before. I was born and raised in Petersburg, and I moved to Juneau 8.5 years ago to work for the state. I've worked for the state in a number of positions and recently just moved to a job at the Alaska Municipal League. I'm running for another term because I want to keep doing the important work that we've already started. Namely, my number 1 priority at the moment is housing, which I think you'll probably hear a lot tonight from my fellow Assembly members and fellow candidates. But longer term, I'd also like to take a look at the way we budget and perhaps be more responsive in our budgeting to kind of help taxpayers save money. And I don't have enough time to get into that in the next 10 seconds, but hopefully in one of these later questions, I can get into that in more detail. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight.
All right, thank you, Carol Treem. Greg Smith, you're up next.
Thank you, KINY, KTOO, and everyone for having this forum tonight. Good to speak with you. I'm Greg Smith, running for my second term on the Juneau Assembly. Born and raised in Juneau, graduated JDHS, went outside for about 10 years, and then have been back for about 8 or 9. Kind of like Carol said, there's just good work still need to be done. I think we did some good work already on addressing just key community issues that I believe we can all kind of agree on: childcare, housing, economic development, but still a lot more work to be done. Housing being a key issue. I also kind of want to keep working towards our climate goals, trying to get more federal jobs to town, solid waste, and childcare is still kind of a continued issue, but still more work to do, and looking forward to doing it.
All right, thanks, Greg Smith. Wade Bryson, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. I've been glitching as I was listening here, so if I go out, I'm just glitchy right now. My name's Wade Bryson. I'm thankfully running for my second full term. I have done 4 years like Ms. Treem. I finished the mayor's last year of her term before she became, once she became mayor. I've been in Juneau for 27 years. I've been married to my wife, Christine, for 19 years. Partner in the Juneau Bike Doctor, and I'm old buildings and trying to fix them up. I've been the host of Problem Corner for about 14 years that I took over from Senator Egan, and that's been a great position doing, and hopefully you guys were able to hear all that. Yeah, I really appreciate the community giving us another opportunity to continue serving Juneau. Thank you.
Thank you, Wade Bryson. So now we're going to go ahead and get on with the questions. So we're going to begin with Carol Treem. How can the CBJ best support its oldest citizens so that they can remain in Juneau? You have 55 seconds.
So this is a really important question because I think we're seeing that our population is aging, and the Assembly a few years ago worked with partners to bring the senior assisted living facility to town, and I think supporting that effort and perhaps more. I don't know that that's going to be enough housing for seniors as our population continues to age. So I would like to keep that as an option as well. And then also, I think if we work on the cost of living, a lot of seniors live on fixed incomes, and bringing the cost of living down where we can. We've talked about sales tax ideas that may or may not help seniors, but there's other ideas out there. Sales tax on utilities, not just on food. There's a variety of ideas we can talk about that will bring down the cost of living and help those seniors who are working on a fixed income.
All right, I think I can go with the timer, I believe. All righty, so thank you, Carol. We're gonna go ahead and have Greg Smith talk. You have 55 seconds.
Thank you. Keeping seniors in town is a key thing, and I think it's they contribute so much to our community with volunteering and a multitude of other things, caring for children. Housing is key. Excited to see the new senior living center open, I believe, next year. And then there's also some other key things: quality of life and making sure that there's good recreational facilities and opportunities for them. And also, I've heard one thing is trying to make sure we have a workforce to be able to provide care either at their house, at their homes, or at something like a senior living facility. I think it's also paying attention to just sometimes some small things like awnings downtown so people have areas they can walk that are free of snow, making sure sidewalks and things are in good repair.
All righty, thank you, Greg Smith. Wade Bryson, you have 55 seconds.
Excellent. So my answer is housing, housing, housing. Housing so that we can bring down the cost of housing, so that the employees of the medical field have places to live and that we can recruit to Juneau. Juneau has had a medical industry kind of breakthrough. And so there has been a lot of development and, new medical facilities being built in Juneau. So Trillium Landing, the senior center that we did tax abatement for, is a great example. So it'll take all of those components together to make sure that we're moving Juneau forward, so that we can have Juneau as a great place to retire. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you, Wade Bryson. Jennifer has the next question.
We'll start with Greg Smith on this one. What do you propose to attract and retain a younger workforce in Juneau? You have 55 seconds.
Yeah, key question. I think it's some obvious things like affordable housing, childcare, good jobs. And then I also think, again, I think some of it does go back to quality of life. I'm hearing about more young people who love Juneau and love the recreation that we have. There's how nice things are day to day, the access to outdoors activities and that type of thing. But I think it's probably some of the basics: housing and affordable housing they can afford, childcare for their families, and then good jobs. And I think probably more, as we're seeing as a result of the pandemic, quality internet so people can work remotely. Thanks.
Great, and my script is out of order. I've got Wade Bryson up next, so sorry, Carol. I don't want to get all confused here. So Wade Bryson, 55 seconds.
Yes. Again, the answer is going to be housing, housing, and housing. We are throwing the kitchen sink at developing housing so that people have places to live when they come to work. This summer, even the tour operators were having a difficult time fully housing and staffing their businesses. So we have to make some pretty great strides here so that we can recruit the current workforce that we need and have room for growth for the workforce that we're hoping to attract. Carol or Greg, we are probably going to say the same answers because we've all been going through the same meetings. Recreation activities, keeping an eye on the cost of living, the sales tax issue that we've really been looking at. All of these things will contribute to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Treem, 55 seconds.
Are you sick of us saying housing yet? Because that's also what I would say first. I mean, that's our immediate problem is housing, also childcare, and it's really, I've been really sad of the people that we've lost from this community who have left, and they've specifically said it's because they cannot afford to live here. They want to buy a home and they can't afford that here. Even if they want to rent here, they can't afford that. And it's kind of devastating to our community. So housing, and like Greg and Wade mentioned, we're working on that. Childcare, we're working towards that as well. I think longer term, there's some economic development we need to do, especially diversifying our economy. We're seeing state government shrink as a portion of our local economy, and that's traditionally been kind of the driver of Juneau. So I think we need to work on attracting other jobs of that kind of similar nature. And like Greg mentioned, with remote work, that's definitely a possibility. We can bring new people to Juneau.
Thanks, Carol Treem. I'm going to toss it over to Clarice for the next question.
Alrighty, guys. So many residents were surprised to see a new gas station being built in the wetlands. Prior assembly voted to rezone land parcels in the wetlands from rural, reserve to industrial. What is your perspective on how this zoning designation and the current land use meet community needs? We'll start with Wade Bryson. You have 55 seconds.
Ooh, could you repeat the question real quick? I was glitched out and I only heard a fraction of what you said, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So many residents were surprised to see a new gas station being built in the wetlands. Prior assemblies voted to rezone land parcels in the wetlands from rural, reserve to industrial. What is your perspective on how this zoning designation and the current land use meet community needs?
Oh, thank you for the question. Okay, so prior to us joining the assembly, one of the assembly's goals was to recognize and zone industrial The city was afraid that there wasn't going to be enough industrial land. And so at that time, prior to us joining, that was the order of the day. We have since discovered that we don't need as much industrial land, and that's what has allowed for some of the zones to change. They're at least not going towards industrial anymore. A zoning issue is tough. We have the comprehensive plan that gives us a guide on what our zones should be and how they should be working together. So that way you don't have the wrong zones next to each other. It's a complicated issue, and it's a controversial every time that it comes up.
All right, thank you, Wade Bryson. Carol, you're up and you have 55 seconds.
Thank you. I was also surprised to see that gas station. It seems like an odd investment choice in the year 2022, but it is there. Yeah, the zoning issue is a complicated one, and I know that past assemblies have been really worried about the availability of industrial land in Juneau. And like I mentioned earlier, I mean, for a lot of economic development reasons, I think they were concerned that we wouldn't have the necessary land available for industrial purposes. They were probably making the best choice with the best information that they had at the time. I think we're about to enter a cycle where we redo our comp plan, and that's something we should take a look at, is what's the future of Juneau and what are our needs going to be? Do we have the same needs now, and will we have the same needs in the future that we thought we did 10 or 20 years ago? So comp plan is the answer.
All righty, thank you, Carol Treem. Greg Smith, you have 55 seconds.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know the details or the discussion regarding that rezone. I guess rezoning more broadly, we designate certain lands in a certain zone for a reason, and so it's important, I think, to look at a rezone carefully. We've been asked and are being asked to potentially rezone an area out in Peterson Hill for housing, which obviously all of us are very in support of. But it's something we need to look at carefully, because it is essentially kind of changing the plan and kind of changing what a certain area was designated. And that does have impacts to neighbors and the community. We don't take it lightly as we do these plans. So it's something we need to keep an eye on.
Alrighty, thank you, Greg Smith. Jennifer has the next question.
Okay, can the city adopt a property tax structure that encourages construction and discourages leaving lots empty? Example, Franklin and 4th downtown. Let's see, Carol Treem, you're up first, 55 seconds.
Thank you. I'm so glad you asked this question. Currently, no, not with the state law, with Title 29, but I think we are working on advocating in the legislature that they change Title 29 that would allow Juneau and any other community in Alaska to have more flexibility with how we use property taxes as incentives or disincentives to try to get what the community needs. I think that we need to communicate that to our local delegation and make sure that that's at the list of our priorities when we send those to the legislature. Say, we need this in our town to encourage housing, to discourage those vacant buildings that we see downtown that could be used by our local entrepreneurs. I know people want to buy them. So unfortunately, the answer is that state law doesn't give us as much flexibility as I know this assembly would like, but we are trying to influence that in the legislature and trying to work on getting that changed.
Great, thank you. Greg Smith, I'm gonna take this one too.
Yeah, Carol hit it on the head. We had met with the city attorney about this issue. Just because we have heard from people downtown that there are some properties that are, blight isn't the right word, but that are just that are problematic for the appearance, the feel, the economic development of downtown. And it is going to take a legislative fix. It's something that we're talking about looking into, because downtown, it's just important for us to get it right. It's just the economic activity that comes out of there, the jobs, the tax base, and just it's kind of being the gateway to our community for visitors. It's important that it looks right, and we should be able to use tools to make it the way that we want it.
Great, thank you. Wade Bryson.
Thank you. Yeah, so Ms. Stream and Mr. Smith have a lot of the information town, and they are causing some development issues. So it's not just vacant building owner issues. There's also the avalanche zones that has directly stopped a building sale, and it has hampered another entity's desire to renovate a building for housing. So that's another one of the issues that downtown housing has to face. I hope you guys are getting at least some of my answer. Thank you.
Yeah, we got most of that. Thank you, Wade Bryson. I'm tossing it over to Clarice for the next question.
Thank you. So next question, the mayor and assembly have been working to ensure adequate and affordable childcare that make sure it's available to all families that request it. What is your commitment to that goal, and what additional steps, if any, do you believe should be taken to provide adequate childcare in Juneau? We have Greg Smith. You have 55 seconds.
Thank you. I think everyone in the assembly and probably everyone in the community, I mean, we are committed to taking action because we know it is such an important issue for Juneau families, for economy, and then also just for raising our children. There are some more steps. Unfortunately, it really just is going to take more money. Childcare in our state, in our community, our state, and our nation is kind of a market failure, and that the price you pay for the service is just, it's not affordable, and it is what they call a market failure. And I think we can make investments. I'm hoping the state will continue to make investments, and then the federal government will hopefully be making investments, because we have to do something different. It just isn't working. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg Smith. Wade Bryson, you're up next. You have 55 seconds.
Thank you. So I served on the mayor's child care task force right when I got on the assembly. And, we moved a few $100,000 to help solve the problem then. This assembly has put real money towards assisting and helping incentivize child cares to be able to grow their workforce, which is what is needed. The other component of child care is that, and Greg kind of was hinting to this, there's no value in the business. It's just a service-based model. And so it's not like you can have like a regular business. You can't go get a loan to buy the equipment to then provide the service. It's just, you're either providing the service to the kids or it's not, and it's not generating money. And so it does have a model that needs community assistance. It's a good way to put it. Thank you.
Thank you, Wade Bryson. Carol Treem, you're up next, and you have 55 seconds.
So Greg and Wade both mentioned the funding that we've done recently, and I think that has been great because it's gone to childcare providers directly to help them retain and educate their staff and get their staff at a higher quality. I think it's great that we've given that to the private market here in town. I think we need to stop treating that as a one-time budget issue. It's come up every year of, do we want to keep supporting this? And I think obviously the answer is this community needs us to keep putting that financial support into childcare assistance. And finally, I think we also need to work with the school district on the Rally program. I know some parents have had some concerns with Rally, and I don't want the assembly to meddle in the business of the school district too much, but since that funding does get allocated by the assembly, I think there's an opportunity there for us to work to improve that program as well.
All right, thank you, Carol Treem. Jennifer is gonna take it back over.
Okay, Last year, the Assembly asked the Community Development Department to continue working on public outreach and information gathering regarding changes to the avalanche and mass wasting assessment zoning. Are residents endangered by the current zoning? And if so, how do you propose to facilitate a shift in residential zoning? We'll start with Wade Bryson, who already brought up this issue. You have 55 seconds.
Well, we recently had what I felt was one of the probably the most productive joint sessions between the Assembly and the Planning Commission, where we were trying to hash out some of these complicated issues, finding out what their issues are, where the are a better understanding of what minor changes. They showed a chart, took 16 meetings to be able to make one change. The only danger I see right now is the prevention of development, because that's the harm that it's causing right now. I'm not as concerned for avalanches. Thank you.
All right, we got most of that one too. Carol Treem, you're up next.
So this issue is hard for me to kind of wrap my head around. The fatal landslides that have happened recently in Sitka and Haines just kind of really shake me to my core. So I want us to move forward in a way that it keeps Juneau residents as safe as possible, and hopefully we avoid the situations that have happened in other places, although landslides are so unpredictable that it's hard to do, while also homeowners have a real vested interest in the value of their homes that they've kind of poured their life savings into. It's the biggest investment most people make ever in their entire lives. So that's a really fine balance. And I think what it's going to require is a lot of public process and a lot of information before we get to any decision making. And we have started that, but we kind of put it on the back burner while we worked on other things. And I think we need to get back to that and just continue that public process.
Thanks, Carol Treem. Greg Smith, you have 55 seconds.
Thank you. In terms of the question about it, are people in danger? I don't think so. I think there, of course, are risks and things are unpredictable. The intensity of some of our weather events are probably changing the field. And so there may be parts of town that are unsafe to develop and build. From what I understand, I mean, obviously this is complicated technical work. I don't think that every area listed as a moderate or severe hazard is an unsafe area. We've asked the Planning Commission and the Community Development Department to do more work and look into this. I believe there's more work to do in terms of working with local experts who know mass wasting in Juneau and Southeast, and hopefully continue to update those maps and coming up with regulations that make sense. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Greg Smith. And you're in luck. Clarice has our last question.
Thank you. So last question, which ballot measure outcome are you most interested in, and what would you tell voters who are still undecided? We're going to start with Carol Treem. You have 55 seconds.
I think the mandatory disclosure one is going to be maybe the most unpredictable. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. Mandatory disclosure will help lower the property taxes of middle and low income homeowners, because it will even that out with the higher income properties that don't come on the market quite as frequently. I also want to say that having that information out there in the housing market, this crazy housing market that we've seen, will only help buyers and sellers when they have a full, transparent, view of the housing market. They'll be able to make the best decisions based on that and not have that kind of be secretive and kept, by the experts who will dole that information out when they feel that it will benefit them. So I would urge people to vote against that, to vote no on the mandatory disclosure. That's how I will be voting, but it is a complicated one.
All right, thank you, Carol Treem. Greg Smith, you're up next and you have 55 seconds.
Yeah, thanks. I think they're all important questions. There are 4 ballot questions this year. I think a very key one is the 1% sales tax. It's asked every 5 years of the voters, and it is essentially extending the 1% sales tax that we currently have, and it provides funding and money to invest in our community. It has deferred maintenance for city and school facilities, docks and harbors, development of Telephone Hill, working on the parking garage, the North SOB parking garage, energy efficiency improvements in the city, as well as some money, which is kind of unusual for a program, but it's something that we talked about before that's so critical, childcare. So I'm hoping that will be supported and people will vote for extending the 1% sales tax.
All right. Thank you, Greg Smith. Wade Bryson, you're last, and you have 55 seconds.
Thank you. So it's probably no secret now that I am an advocate for the new City Hall. I've been heading up the conversation as the chair of Public Works and Facilities, and we were responsible with coming up with the best solution for City Hall. We're in an inadequate, undersized old building, and we pay rent for 2/3 of city government operations. I truly believe we came up with the very best outcome, the best product that will provide the longest life for the most Juneauites. I strongly ask the community to please support yes on a new City Hall. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Wade Bryson, and thanks for all picking different ones. If we had a 4th candidate, we could cover them all. But look for more information from KTOO and the Juneau Empire about the ballot measures. We're committed to making sure that voters are informed on all of these. That's it for questions. We're going to wrap up candidates closing statements, and we're going to start with Greg Smith, and you have 1 minute, an extra 5 seconds for these, so go for it.
Thank you, Jennifer and Clarice, for covering this, for putting this on to give the community a chance to hear from us and talk about these important issues, and for your work to provide information to the public on the ballot measures and other happenings with the city. It's a tremendous honor to serve on the Assembly. I was born and raised here, and I hope we are doing the work that the community wants. There's obviously a lot of needs and a lot of priorities and things to work on, but I hope we do a good job with the guidance from staff to really focus on key community priorities. And if we aren't, write in and let us know, come and testify at Assembly meetings. But hopefully with the 9 of us kind of with our ears to the ground, knowing the community, we focus on the key things. So please keep us letting us know what we need to do, and remember to go out and vote on or before October 4th. Thank you.
It's the same goal, and that's to make Juneau the best place that it can be for us and our families and for everybody else. And appreciate the opportunity. Thank you to Clarice and Jennifer and Kirsha and everybody else who helped put this on. I hope, I know that Zoom is a very convenient and accessible way of doing things, but I do look forward to seeing you all in person at some point soon. So thank you very much.
Yeah. So that wraps it up for the Assembly portion of the forum. We're going to now move the candidates for Juneau School Board. This is the 2022 Virtual Candidate Forum from the League of Women Voters, KTOO, KINY, in the Juneau Empire. Welcome to those of you that are listening to us on the radio or watching the live stream. Thank you.
Candidates will have 55 seconds to respond to. We'll end with 1 minute closing statements from each candidate. We'll start with Emma Mackey. You have 1 minute for your opening statement.
Thank you. So I'm gonna lean forward for the microphone. I hear that I'm not always well heard on this system. After roughly 15 years of essentially flat funding Our school district is starting to really feel severe effects of this. We're expected to spend basically the same amount of money despite inflation compounded over 15 years. We have seen our PTR raise, which means the number of teachers or the number of students per teacher have risen purely because of these pressures. We have had successes. I do believe that we did a decent job of navigating COVID given the restrictions and the information at the time. But now that we've come out of COVID, how do we really look at this district moving forward? I think despite being unopposed, this is really the question moving forward, and the most important question probably Alaska has educationally statewide.
All right, thank you. Dee Dee Sorensen, go ahead with your 1 minute.
Thank you. I have been on the school board now for 3 years. I am a retired teacher. I started teaching in 1973 and taught until 2018. So as a board member, I have a very different breadth of concern for the school district. Like Mr. Mackey, I agree that funding is incredibly restricted. I mean, there is no way to put together the program that students need, particularly post-COVID, with the, 60 cents on the dollar that the state is providing for us. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dee Dee Sorensen. We're gonna go into the questions. We'll start with Emma Mackey. What are your ideas for encouraging students to go into career fields which most desperately need workers? You have 55 seconds.
As a board member, I really don't have the authority to really implement any ideas. But what I would like to see is us have a broader engagement of career awareness, as well as career development, as well as apprenticeship opportunities while still attending high school. I think that since I've been on the board, it's come up almost every single year, and every single year I always bring up, why aren't we working more with apprenticeship programs? I think that's essential because we have to engage the apprenticeship programs in order to have the number of plumbers, electricians, boiler workers, every pipe fitters that we need both locally as well as statewide. And we really, really need to reach out to those workers in addition to our resources with colleges and technical schools.
Thank you. Dee Dee Sorensen, you have 55 seconds.
Thank you. Our career and technical education has slowly been building back up. I mean, it suffered a dramatic, well, for lack of a better word, collapse, probably 25 years ago, when the attitude was that the only thing that was, important for a student was to be prepared for college. And that has certainly come back to bite us. The career, the things that Dr. Mackey mentioned with the apprenticeships and being able to utilize time during the school year, I think is incredibly important, as is our work with the university that has a variety of programs that offer career certificates.
You always get to finish your sentence as long as it's not too long. Thank you. I'm going to hand it over to Clarice for the next question.
All right, thank you. So we're going to go back to Dee Dee Sorensen again. Who are some community partners that could enhance the education and well-being of our students? You have 55 seconds.
Well, we work with a large number of community partners. We work with See Alaska and Gold Belt and Tlingit Haida. We work with the I'm drawing a blank here, with the Juneau Association for Young Children. We have over the years have had much help from Rotary in a variety of different projects that we've handled. We've had in past years, and we need to re-up our people who come into our schools and into our elementary schools and read with our children, like the Coast Guard and retired Alaskans.
Perfect, thank you. Emil Mackey, you go next, and you have 1 minute, or sorry, 55 seconds. You don't get the extra 5 seconds, unfortunately.
It's okay. No, I think we actually have an abundance of volunteer organizations that actually help in our school. So I'm going to kind of pivot on this and go back to CTE in a way. I think one thing that we really need that would actually help our school district is actually for one of the high schools to have an ROTC program. ROTC not only creates, is not only a missing element that's available in most of the other urban school districts, it is one of the greatest of the vocational educators in the world. Now, I know a lot of people don't necessarily have a affinity for military careership. But that being said, there is a great deal to gain in this community from students that have no other options than to find an apprenticeship or a military service or something that will help them discover themselves and create a lifelong earnings for themselves. And I think an ROTC program would help with that discovery across a great deal of areas.
Alrighty, thank you. I'm gonna hand it back over to Jennifer.
Okay, and we'll start with Emil Mackey again this time. How are we, I think, meaning the school district, supporting staff members in professional development?
That's actually been a huge focus for the school district ever since I was first elected back in 2015. And I think we've continued to basically grow that. And that also is usually a point that the teachers remind us of during the negotiated agreements. So it's kind of a win-win. We want to see successful teachers, and the teachers genuinely want to be successful teachers. So I think it's very important for us to continue to provide the time and the resources needed in order to support ongoing teacher learning, both in the classroom, as well as resource development, as well as well, every other method that we can think of for them to continue to grow professionally.
Thank you. Dee Dee Sorensen?
I guess one of the most recent, not recent, but in the last few years, professional development opportunity for elementary teachers has been a different approach to teaching reading, a more, some people call it the science of reading. It's a program that is peer reviewed, looking at how children best learn to read. What's the best way to help most children learn to read versus having someone just sell you a textbook, which has proved pretty disastrous for us in the past. And we have a big statewide STEAM or STEM science technology conference coming up for our teachers this October.
Great, thank you. Clarice has the next question.
Well, speaking of technology, how are we keeping up with technological demands? We'll start with you, Dee Dee Sorensen.
Well, how are we keeping up with technological demands? We really boosted the numbers of our technological pieces of equipment during the pandemic. Not all of them came back to us, so we have continued to add to that. We were fortunate in getting federal monies to help with that. Actually, we spend a considerable amount of money on the licensure for a whole range of different platforms for our students and for all kinds of different communication with families, technical education. So we do what we can with the money that we have, and it is a priority.
Alrighty, thank you. Emil Mackey, you have 55 seconds.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to acknowledge something, and I cannot remember specifically, but it was either Sea Alaska or Gold Belt, and I apologize, I can't remember which one of those two, donated a massive number of laptops during the pandemic, and that was a game changer. The downside to that is that we don't have enough money to maintain them. So even though they're here, I don't know what's going to happen 2 or 3 years from now when we have to cycle these out, because we're cycling them out with what our budgetary capacity is, and that's too low. That being said, I think that we have to expand our focus on technological education. There are some students that thrive with a blended education delivery. I think we should continue to support that. Some have moved to homeschool, but still want to be associated with the district. We have to continue to support them. Some need a teacher. And by the way, a teacher is the most important piece of technology we have. We have to continue to develop them as well.
All righty, thank you. Jennifer has the final question.
All right, it's a big one. The pandemic has seriously interrupted teaching and learning over the past 2 years. We're learning more and more about that. What strategies do you propose to help mitigate any loss of academic proficiency as a result? And we'll start with Emil Mackey.
My child started kindergarten this year. I will openly tell you, he showed signs of the pandemic. The time that his preschool was shut down, he delayed his speech development. He delayed a lot of things, and he's not alone in this community. But we had to do what we had to do. And with the information that we had, I think we did the right thing at the time. But honestly, we need to continue to support those kids. I would like to see us have something similar to Rally, but for skill recovery. I would also like to see us continue to invest in summer programs to also allow students to have what I would call skill recovery. I think this is something that's going to haunt us throughout the next 12 to 15 years. But it's just a reality we're going to have to adjust for, and we need to budget for it.
All right, thank you. Dee Dee Sorensen.
Well, we have used our federal pandemic money to supplement our budget to reduce class size. And it's still too high given the losses that many students suffered during the pandemic. And I mean, I want to be clear here, not all students lost a ton of ground, but for those that did, we have a lot to do to help them catch up. And we also, in that balance, I think for many students, the biggest loss was the loss of the social piece and learning to get along and all of the fundamental skills of being in school and being in society.
All right, thank you. Well, that was all of the questions. You guys did great. Candidates now have 1 minute each to give their closing statements. We'll start with Emil Mackey. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Both Dee Dee and I are unopposed. And this is still an important election, and I want to explain why. I personally believe that we can no longer continue to just kind of tinker around the edges and incrementally change this district. I think the time has come in order to revision this district at a fundamental level and figure out where we want to be 5 years from now so that we can create a plan to get there. We're currently looking at a strategic plan, but I think we need to go back and we need to revision where we're going. We cannot continue to do the same things with flat funding, and there's no clue that the state is going to change this. Until the state changes it, we have to figure out how to make things work with what we have, and I don't see how we can physically do that under the same system we have now. So if you vote for me, please vote for me if you believe that this is something we need to undertake as a board, because it will send a clue to the school board that bold change is needed.
All righty, thank you. And now Dee Dee Sorensen, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. I am looking forward to the next 3 years on the board because I really believe, as a former teacher, in the direction that the schools, particularly at the elementary, are moving. And unfortunately for all of us, being able to determine how things are going is a long process. You know, it's sort of like this, you know, longitudinal process that takes about 12 years. I am hopeful in the work that we're doing. I think we have schools filled with committed individuals, committed teachers who really want to do the best they can for their students. And I think that, you know, and we have administrators who are also committed. It's just unfortunate that we're trying to do it, you know, with nickels instead of dollars.
All right. Thank you, Emma Mackey and Dee Dee Sorensen. And thank you to those of you who joined us for tonight's forum. If you missed part of it, you can find the full video at juneauempire.com, KTOO.org, and JuneauLWV.org. I think that version will have the minute or two that we lost during the broadcast too. So the Zoom kept going, so we should be able to have the full program for you. You can find more local election coverage, voter information, and candidate profiles on all of our websites too.
Yeah, and we want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters for co-sponsoring this forum with KTOO, KINY, and the Juneau Empire. And to the voters in Juneau, be sure to return your mail-in ballots on or before Election Day, October 4th. Ballots can be returned by mail, dropped off at a secure ballot box at the Douglas Library or Statter Harbor starting tomorrow, September 15th, or at vote centers at City Hall or the Mendenhall Valley Public Library starting September 19th.
The ballots have to be mailed and they have to be postmarked by October 4th. If you do mail them, and ballots that are brought to the drop boxes have to be there by 8 p.m. on October 4th. You can also drop off ballots or request a replacement ballot in person at City Hall or the Valley Library. You can find more information on our city's website, juneau.org/elections. Thank you very much and have a nice night.